Writer Radio Podcast is brought to you by Community Beer Works, making good beer for good people since 2012. The future of Community Beer Works is bright with a new tap room opening. The old tap room currently closed, but the brewery remains open, which means you can still buy the beer all over Western New York and beyond. Single order hazy IPA, double order hazy IPA, both go great with wings. Get it? Single order, double order? The Whale is a classic, and there are all sorts of different varieties always coming out. And let's go Pills. It's Community Beer Works. A lot of exciting things going on, including CBW Trivia Night, which takes place Mondays at Transit Music Lounge in Depew. Get there at 7 to sign in. We'll start playing around 7:30, wrap things up around 9, and then it's your choice to stick around and enjoy beer and wings and all the fun things. Or you can get home. It's a school night. Get home at a reasonable time. Either way, we look forward to seeing you at Transit Music Lounge Mondays for Community Beer Works Trivia Night, hosted by me, Brad, and I hope to see you there as well. Now, on with the show.
One supercomputer goes round the outside, round the outside, round the outside. One supercomputer goes round the outside, round the outside, round the outside. Guess who's back? Back again? Lamar is back. Tell a friend. Guess who's back? 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 Lamar is back. I've created a monster. 'Cause nobody wants to see Alexa no more. They want Lamar. She has chopped liver. Well, if you want Lamar, this is what I'll give ya. A little bit of processing mixed with some smart answers, some gigawatts that'll jumpstart my hard drive quicker, and a shock when I get shocked with a power surge by the repairman when I'm not cooperating, when I'm uploading the table while he's operating. You waited this long. Now stop debating, 'cause I'm back. I'm on the T1 line and computating. Now, this looks like a job for me. So everybody, just follow me. 'Cause we need a little answering. 'Cause it feels so empty without me. I said this looks like a job for me. So everybody, just follow me. 'Cause we need a little answering. 'Cause it feels so empty without me. Lamar.
Well, that was unexpected. What's up, Writer Radio? I have a feeling we'll be hearing more of that as time goes on, perhaps even later this week. Welcome to Writer Radio. Made you wait a few days. I apologize for that. And then what you're going to get is not new at all. It's new to you. It's not new to me. A few years ago, and this is pre-pandemic, so we're probably talking maybe 5 years ago or so, my good friend Josh Gregory and I set out, or it was his idea. He said, come over to my house, we're going to start doing a music-related podcast. We recorded one episode, and then he got busy. I don't know if he changed jobs or just had a kid, whatever it was, and we just never recorded again and never released it, never did anything. And I remember it being a good conversation. So I got in touch with him and I said, send that thing over to me. And let me see if there's anything there that I can use. And I decided I can use pretty much the whole thing. In fact, yeah, why not? You can hear the whole thing. And we'll attach it right here. And that'll be it for this episode. So you won't hear me again. You'll just hear, I think, Josh close out what was going to be our new, our then new music podcast called Left Off the Dial. But that's what we got for today. Thank you for listening. Please continue to do all the things, the sharing, the liking, the favoriting. Is that a thing? I don't even know. The reviews, rating, reviewing, sharing. I think those are the big ones. Sharing, really. Tell people. And come to Trivia Night on Mondays at Transit Music Lounge if you happen to be local to the Western New York area, specifically to the, as my good friend Chris Parker called it, the Polish Bermuda Triangle of Cheektowaga, Lancaster, and Depew. Transit Road near like French Road, near Clinton Street, that area. Transit Music Lounge, trivia, Monday nights, 7 p.m. We actually start at 7:30. You check in at 7. Game starts at 7:30. We're done by about 9. So quick little thing, you can win prizes and support the podcast and Community Beer Works in particular on tap now at Transit Music Lounge. So hope to see you there. Here is my conversation with Josh Gregory about music in general from a couple years ago, but it's brand new to you. I didn't need to tell you it's old, but maybe there's something in there that dates it. Like maybe we're talking about something that's super current at the time, but now feels old. I don't know. Happens a lot with me when I do things and suddenly it feels old. All right. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon. In fact, I'll talk to you now.
Welcome to the Left Off the Dial podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Gregory. I'm here with Brad Ryder. What's up, man?
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. This is really, really cool. I'm glad that we're actually sitting down to do this.
This feels official.
Yeah.
It's like there's this whole world of podcasting that goes on. I've recorded hundreds of podcasts, but I do them in this sort of radio way. Like I do them. I have a studio set up in an office at my place of work. Like it's. I feel like a podcast is supposed to come from somebody's house. It's supposed to come from a basement or a designated area, some kind of a shed, something.
Right.
And this feels legit. I drove to your house to come to your basement.
And here we are. Right.
And here we are.
And that's the beauty part. We'll do it at your house. I mean, whatever. I mean, it's...
This is Studio A. Mine will be Studio B.
Studio B, right. That's what we'll have to...
South Studio.
It's so funny because I'll watch podcasts. Like, I love Joe Rogan's podcast.
You watch podcasts?
I watch it. He has it on YouTube.
You have time to use your eyes to watch podcasts?
I do not. But, I mean, I turn it on my phone, and then I'll just do whatever I'm doing. But every once in a while, you look down at your phone.
All right,
yeah, there's Joe Rogan talking to whoever. And he's got this cool ass studio and all this stuff. And I was like thinking to myself, okay, I've got this space in my basement. It's not super fancy. It's where I do all my other stuff for my other podcasts, whatever. But I'm like, you know what? This is punk as fuck, man. This is like the way it's supposed to be. This is supposed to be raw. I mean, because it's going to be two guys talking sometimes. We're also going to have guests on to talk about stuff from the music industry. But this is the way I envisioned it. This is the way I wanted it. Two guys talking about music, cool topics.
Feels a little pump up the volume.
Right, exactly. Like we're on the edge of I don't know. Somebody's like driving around right now trying to find out where we are.
That's right.
So
I should not have parked right in front of the house.
No, now they can track us down.
A very distinct automobile.
So when we first started talking about this a couple months ago, I reached out to you and you were saying, I've been thinking the same thing. And we don't really have a music podcast in this area.
Right.
And we're not going to limit ourselves to this area. I mean, I want everybody to make sure they understand that. But why not? We do have a vibrant music scene here. And I'm talking everything from musicals to, classical music to the bar bands to the cover bands. I mean, we've got a pretty rich area to live in if you like music. Every night there's something going on, whether it's guys down at Nietzsche's, playing banjos or whatever,
right.
to
Jay-Z at the stadium.
Right, exactly. This gigantic concert going on just last night over at the stadium. And why isn't anybody doing this? I know some guys have tried and in conjunction with their job, but I don't think anybody really pulled it off or kept at it for a long time.
Like radio station people, are you saying? Or?
No, actually, it was only on Fridays. But Jeff Myers from the News used to do a Friday chat.
Oh, right.
So, and it was more online. It wasn't really a podcast, but he was like taking questions and people, it was at least there was interaction.
Yep.
And I just step away from that and say, nobody just talks about music. When we were both in radio, and if you're hearing this for the first time and don't know who we are, Brad and I both worked at WGR and WBEN for a number of years. He much longer than I did after I took off. We also worked together at WECK. And
separately in college radio before that.
And then separately in college radio, right. So you were at Geneseo and I was at Fredonia. And both doing music while we were there.
Right.
Because that is a passion. But what I was getting at was it always seemed like because we had to talk about sports, you still brought music into it,
as
right?
much as you possibly could.
Of course.
I remember when I was first hired as the producer for Bulldog Show. We both left GR at the same time. We were both part-time at GR. We both went to BEN full-time at the same time in early 98.
Yep.
And when I became the producer of Bulldog Show, the whole thing for me was the ability to put together the bumps, the music to bring the show back from commercials, because I listened to that show before and there were some that I liked and there were some that just didn't make sense and didn't fit with it. And I wanted to put that was the big, even I guess before that, when I would do stuff, I was producing part-time kind of, Sports Talk Saturday or whatever it was at GR. The coolest thing to me was, man, I'm going to play, Carolina Blues by Blues Traveler on AM radio in Buffalo. I'm going to do that. And it felt like a big deal to me. And just being able to sneak, somebody we both, Reverend Horton Heat, into AM Sports Talk Radio. Chuck Dickerson doesn't know the difference.
Right, he doesn't care.
But right now, I'm going to play something off Liquor in the front, Poker in the rear. And that's going to be like my little message to 3 people who maybe hear it and get it. And that stuff mattered to me. I remember I used to listen to Bulldog on Friday nights. He would always quote Little Bones by the Tragically Hip.
Right.
But he never played it. So he'd always say, it's $2.50 for a highball, $1.50 for a beer, happy hour is here. And he'd start his show. But the song wasn't there. Like, what is the point of that?
Right.
So that was kind of the first, I think I probably brought that up in the interview. Like, well, one of the things I'm going to do is play the goddamn song that you reference every single time. So, yes, in sports talk radio, the music part mattered to me. I still get excited. I hear stuff now, bumps that I know nobody else would have put in, but I know still is just in the system from when I put it in there 15 years ago.
My last stint there, and this was probably in 2005, I remember when I was doing the Saturday and Sunday gigs, you were still doing the evenings. And so I was hosting, Sports Talk Saturday and Sunday. And I had my own folder, and I would tell whoever was producer, because we always had different producers. It wasn't always the same guy. I don't want to hear anybody else's bumps. Like, this is my folder. And when I'm doing the show, I don't want to hear what Brad's doing. I don't want to hear what anybody, Greg's doing in the afternoon. Like, this has to be the shit that I put together because this is what I need to hear.
Right. It's not just, and I think I'm making it sound like when I first got to do radio, the music mattered to me. 2 years, 3, 4 years ago, something at UB, I do UB football games, UB football broadcasts, and they're produced from back at the studio in Amherst. And at some point, I just got so tired of the crap they were playing, bringing us back. Like, first of all, what are we doing not using Bulls on Parade by Rage? They're the UB Bulls. It's an exciting football sounding, just play the song. So I kind of started with that, but then I just kept going and going. I got like 32 little bumps, and the one day I put them into a folder. I got in there, pregame show. Hey, whoever you are, there's a new folder there. That's what we're using. We're using mine, and it mattered to me. This is 20 years into doing radio, mostly sports talk. I still care about the 10 seconds of music that play when we're coming back from a break.
Before we get on to our topic, and we do have a topic tonight, but obviously this is just a cool way to ramp into things. When you mentioned Chris, when Bulldog and the way that you got to play those bumps, and I think one of the last times I was there, again, this would have been 2005, I had a Forgotten Rebels tune that I would use as bump music. And I know nobody at that station knows who the hell the Forgotten Rebels are. Right. So I told Greg, I said, hey, the producer at the time, I said, play this, okay? Just do it. Just see what happens. So we're standing in the control room. They come back from break. I can't even remember what song it was. It might have been Bomb the Boats or something. This Canadian punk band's pretty obscure. And just to see the look on Bulldog's face when he hears that, I mean, he immediately looked up like, wait a minute. Who the hell is playing? Because he knew right away. And I love doing stuff like that because you see how important it is. And people might think it's trivial, like the way that you and I have this passion about, this keeps me in the mood. This gets everybody fired up for Bulls football. It is important. I mean, it's seriously, if it wasn't important, you wouldn't have bump music in radio at all.
Right. There's 2 minutes left in the game. You're down by 4. You got the ball at the 17-yard line, and you come back to comfortably numb.
Right.
Nobody wants that.
No.
Nobody wants that at all. It kills the mood. But yeah, I mean, I remember little moments. I remember watching Olympic coverage and hearing Down with Disease by Fish on NBC's Olympic coverage. And just thinking, well, that was for me alone. And not alone because a lot of people like the band, but just it was a sneaky, there's some fish head that snuck that thing in.
Yep.
And it's just, I like that kind of stuff. I like those. Those are little shout outs to, all right, who gets this one? Who knows this one? Raise your hand. Love that stuff.
So when we first decided that we were going to launch this, I remember I texted you something. I said, this is a cool topic. And you were like, yeah, right on. This is a neat topic. And I think it really does resonate because there's a lot of people, and I maybe it's just I pay too much attention to it, but I see a lot of people talking about the music of today sucks, right? I can't stand 21 Pilots or whatever. I can't stand these guys. These guys blow. And when I look back at, okay, what do I look at in my in my catalog? What do I look at when I was growing up? What do I look at when I was in high school, when I went to college, right after college? And I will make the contention that none of the bands and none of the music that I listened to sucked, And I'm sure it did for lots of people. So this idea popped into my head that you can't really be objective about the music you grew up with. You just can't possibly be, because it's in your DNA. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, we got to talk about this. We've got to talk about this because I think that kids from today, or kids, even whoever's into this scene, the kerfuffle and all that kind of stuff, that I would no interest in any of that. But there are people who love it. They totally dig it. And they would look at me and be like, well, you just listen to old people music because we're in our 40s.
Right.
And Nirvana's old people music.
It really is.
It really is.
What's funny is when you bring up the music that I grew up on, my first thought is not the tapes or albums or CDs or anything that I bought. It's like what was on in the car when I was riding around in the back of a 1982 Ford LTD with my dad driving, and we're going to church or whatever we're doing. I'm listening to. I used to get so mad. I never liked church, but I think one of my first real problems with church was that it never allowed me to hear like the top 8 on Casey Kasem's countdown or Rick D's countdown or they'd start those things at 8:00 in the morning and it'd go till 11, let's say, and church is at 10:30 or whatever it was. We would drive and I'd wake up and listen to the thing because I cared. I cared when Hall & Oates broke the record for, top selling duo of all time. I cared. I was rooting for them like they were, the Sabres. I cared about that. And to not be able to hear the top 10 of that stuff really made me mad. So that's like one of the first strikes against church was not letting me hear, the end of the countdown. Or maybe I would get back in the car in time for like numbers 3, 2, and 1 or something like that. But messing up the countdown was a problem for me. But I think of that, and then I think of like the oldies stuff or even the 70s type of stuff, which I guess would be considered oldies. When I say oldies, I'm thinking of 50s and 60s. Right, but then the Gordon Lightfoot type of stuff, the John Denver stuff, the Kenny Rogers stuff that my mom would listen to. That's the stuff that I think about growing up on. Diana Ross, that kind of stuff that my parents didn't have a ton of records, but they had 20 of them that were really in the rotation, and then another probably 10 more at Christmas time. Like I still like Alabama's Christmas album because I can't listen to Christmas music starting in when do they start it? Probably tomorrow, right. like August. I can't listen to any of it. It drives me nuts unless it was on one of the like 7 or 8 records that my mom used to play for the month leading up to Christmas, and then it feels great. So that's really when I think of what I grew up on. I think of that. Like I have to defend back to Christmas. My wife just detests. I can't even think of what song it is, but it's a Johnny Mathis Christmas song. Like maybe Sleigh Ride, whatever it is. She hates it so much. I feel the need to defend it. I don't think it's any good, but I grew up on it, and it's burned into me, and that's what Christmas sounds like. So if we're going to listen to this thing, could you keep it down while the song that actually makes me feel like we should be listening to the station is on? And so, there's no question that there's nothing I can do about it. Like I can't I don't like the song. I can't objectively say this is a good song, but I can say, shut up, I'm listening to the song because it feels like Christmas now because it's stuck. Hey, it's Brad. First thing I want to do is thank you for checking out this particular episode of Writer Radio. The second thing I want to do is tell you that your work is not done because, as every podcaster in the history of humanity has implored his or her listeners to do, it is helpful, essential that you do all the stuff. The stuff means subscribing and liking and downloading and rating and reviewing and saying nice things and sharing with friends this podcast to keep it going, keep it growing, keep it moving, make everybody's life easier, get more, I was going to say eyeballs, but this is a podcast, more earballs on Writer Radio bigger and better guests, better conversations, better everything. Everything about the show is better if you actively help me to share it with others. And you can do that by doing all of the things mentioned, not just by me just now, but by every podcaster who's ever sat down behind a microphone and done this. On with the show.
And I think that goes with, and I'll use an example kind of piggybacking off of that. I was not a big disco guy. You know, I mean, we were kids, but my parents did go dancing, and my dad was steeped in the blues, lots of jazz, lots of Stevie Wonder, you know, a lot of funk, that kind of stuff. But my mom had the Saturday Night Fever album, right? And every Sunday when we cleaned, or every Saturday rather, we would, you know, had to clean the house. You had your chores, and my brother had to do his little bit over here.
Sure.
My mom would play that Saturday Night Fever album. And I don't dislike one song on that album. I don't even think I've ever seen the movie all the way through, but it's the same thing. It's like there's the Night on Disco Mountain, and then there's the Bee Gees guys, and then there's Tavares over here. So when I hear that, I don't think, man, disco was really lame, because disco kind of was sort of lame.
I've come around on it, but
You know, it's not the worst thing in the world. But,
I get why people hated it.
right, exactly.
For sure. However, I get why it was a thing too.
I think we didn't like it because in my neighborhood, Kiss was king. Everybody loved Kiss. I mean, if you didn't like Kiss, you were getting picked on at the bus stop.
All right, but now let's assess head to head the music of Kiss versus whatever top-notch disco would be.
Well, they came out with that disco album, and I think
like
that's when I
Made
was
for Loving
like,
You and that kind of stuff.
yeah, and I was just like,
That's
this
horrible.
isn't Kiss. This sucks. You know,
Right.
even Van Halen did a couple of, you know, out there disco
Sure.
tunes. I'm like,
The
what are you guys
Stones-
doing, man?
The Stones,
Yeah.
just these suicidal, my God, just awful.
Right.
Emotional rescue. Like, what is
Like,
that?
that's terrible.
But I really think the attempt by bands to, you know, pacify the masses, whatever you want to call it, by discofying their music, that was the most egregious, offensive version of disco. Like listening to the Rolling Stones take on disco, listening to Kiss's take on disco. That's the stuff that's awful.
right.
Disco, in and of itself, it's like, you know, it could just live over here in this room and in this club, and let these people listen to it, and they can have their fun. And over here, you can have your rock. But when it became such a big thing that Kiss felt like it had to react, that's the worst of the whole thing. Are you a big Kiss guy?
I like I said, when I was a kid, I mean, I still like Kiss. I'm not like gonna ever put Kiss down, but the older that I got, and then kind of morphed into this more punk kind of thing, you know, and I started doing the skateboard thing, and then I was listening to more of the, you know, the really the crazy hardcore bands. I still appreciate Kiss. I've never seen them live. I would love to see Kiss live. So I appreciate them, but I wouldn't say that they're, you know, I don't turn them off if they happen to be on the radio, but I also don't line up my Kiss albums and say we're going from A to Z. You know what I mean? I'm not doing that.
I have friends with very similar tastes to mine in a lot of areas that just love Kiss. And I think objectively, if you just sat down and listened to their music, I don't understand how you could make a case for them. However, back to the origin of the discussion, if you grew up on it and that's what's burned into you, I understand, but it kind of blows my mind that band was as big as it was, because I don't know that they have a good song. Like I get that they had a look and that they had a sound and that they had the production value to the show was incredible, and I get what that whole thing could do to a 15-year-old nation. I get it. But listening to it as an adult, or even, you know, as a teen, but 15 years removed from their popularity, it just never made sense to me at all.
And I can rattle off a ton of Kiss songs.
Sure.
You know, because they're in my. But
What's the good one?
You know,
And my wife
Exactly.
hates Beth. My wife hates Beth. I actually kind of like Beth.
Beth. Well,
I kind of like Beth. But there are a couple, like, I guess Detroit Rock City is acceptable. I get what they're doing, but it is very surprising to me that they were able to gain the kind of popularity that they did. Because if you just sit and listen to the music, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't do anything. None of the songs are any real different from any of the other songs except Beth. And it's their success. Congratulations on the marketing aspect of the whole thing. to Gene Simmons and company. But of all the super mega hit bands that have ever existed, that one might be the toughest one for me to wrap my head around.
They actually came to town. I don't know. Do you remember that when they were here?
I saw them.
They came to Depew. No, they were actually in Depew because they made that comic book. This is, gosh, we were little. I mean, we were probably 6 or 7.
Oh, okay.
They came to town to put their blood into the ink that made the comic book, and
Depew?
It was in Depew, New York. Yeah, kid you not. That was like such a
I don't know anything about
back
this.
then it was, and I think
I do remember blood in a comic book ink thing,
Yeah.
but I didn't know that was Depew.
That was Depew. Yeah, they came here, and I always remembered liking Kiss because of the look. I mean, it was certainly theatrical. We had Kiss Alive 2 and Kiss Alive. I mean, those albums were the music is fun. I'm not saying that it's loaded with.
You have an older
highest
brother,
point.
right?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, that helps.
So yeah, exactly. So if he's going to be into that, of course, you're
trickles
under
down
his
to
wing,
you.
and then I'm going to listen to whatever his records are. But I also remember liking them and liking anything that this guy who lived next door to my grandparents. They were like,
There you go.
Well,
Here we go.
Here we go. They were a very religious family, and they came up with all. I had never even heard this. A Kiss was just Kiss, but to them it was Knights in Satan's Service, and AC/DC was Against Christ, Devil's Children. I mean, they just make up all this shit.
Yeah.
So that was probably part of why we liked him too, because it was like if you knew that you could listen to some music that was going to drive these people insane and have them have to pull you aside. Why do you listen to that music? I'm sure that was something to do with it. But I think when I stopped liking Kiss, and not even stopped liking Kiss, just stopped paying attention, was mid-'80s when they realized no one cared about them anymore, and then they were going to take their makeup off. After that, I really didn't like any of the songs. I mean, Heaven's on Fire maybe is okay.
I kind of like that one too.
That one's kind of cool.
I kind of like that.
But like Lick It Up and all that stuff, I'm like, this is just crap. This is just, you guys are holding on and still playing the same 5 tunes, because that's the truth. Really, if you're listening to radio, we can say right now it's one of 5 songs that the radio is going to, I mean, which is typical of every band, I guess you could say that. But that's really it for Kiss. I mean, and I know a lot of the songs. Like I said, I could rattle off a whole bunch, but are any of them really that good? No.
It's weird. Now I'm thinking about, do you remember they had a giant hit with a song called Forever? And it might have been a no makeup era. Like,
I don't remember that one.
It's a big hit. Like, we'll have to look it up and find out where, but it was, let's say it hit number 8 on the pop charts. I'm making that number up completely. But it was, and it was, again, this total guess. I'm going to guess it was one of those like written by Desmond Child type of songs, because it sounds like all of his, collaboration type of things. But that guy's a songwriter. It's poppy, schmaltzy crap, but it's catchy and it works. That's one of their better songs. It was a hit because it worked. But like coming after Lick It Up, I don't see that as so much worse than any of the older stuff. Like, I don't. This is just me. I'm not mad at anybody for really liking Kiss. I just don't. I've never gotten them. Like, there are bands I get mad at people for loving. I don't understand it. Like, I'd like to understand. I'd like to know where people, because like the Knights in Satan's Service thing.
Right.
I remember that. They weren't even scary. They just had makeup on.
Right.
Like,
one guy looked like a fucking cat.
Right. Peter Criss is the least scary human being alive. Exactly. That was not scary. Like, I get people being freaked out by Sabbath.
Right.
I get, like, that was scary.
Well, the whole the triad, the chord. I mean, it was the devil's go.
All of that. I get, like, what is going on here? I get people even. I remember being a little creeped out by Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Like, what are these? These guys are willing to do anything. Like, I was a little afraid of them with AC/DC, but Kiss, it's like dudes in makeup. What about where are we getting the Satan thing from? Like, none of it ever just worked and made sense to me, and it still doesn't.
I think that came from Gene Simmons, because he did look pretty scary,
did he? Or was he wearing platform shoes and he spit fire, blood, or whatever?
Right. I mean, I guess that's what it comes to. Because the other guys didn't. One was like a star child, and then one was.
Well, they also,
what I mean? But none of that was creepy.
No, it wasn't anything. It was dudes in makeup. Like, they were clowns. They were basically clowns in black and silver instead of red and yellow and whatever. It's a Ronald McDonald look. That's not scary. That's not Knights in Satan's Service. It's just 4 weird. And the other thing that they pulled off too, I think, And this happened, let's see, 1990 or 91 or so. Bad Company came to the Odd, and Dan Yankees opened for him. And we went to see Dan Yankees, and I had the tape, Dan Yankees, and it was, Tommy Shaw and Jack Blades and Jack, what's his name?
Ted Nugent.
And Nugent. And in the picture, Nugent was clearly taller than the others. So it was like, Nugent 6'3", and then so these other guys must be, 5'10", 5'11". You get there and you see him. Nugent's 5'7". These other guys are 4'1" or something. Like it's like the picture. If you assume he's tall, the other guys look regular. But then you find out Nugent's not even tall. These other guys are little tiny dudes. That's Kiss too. Like Gene Simmons looked tall because he's next to Paul Stanley, who's 3'1". And they're all wearing the big platform thing. I don't get them being scary. I don't get people loving their music. This was not the intention to bash Kiss today. No. I just don't understand. I don't understand Kiss. I don't get them.
It's when we kicked off the topic of it's hard to be just not having to feel that you have to justify.
It's hard. I would say it's impossible.
But it's impossible because now I'm thinking about, okay, so we can bash Kiss, or no, we're not bashing Kiss. We can tease Kiss. We can make fun of it a little bit.
Trying to understand.
But I look back at it, especially because we had, I hate to use the word cornucopia because it's such a cheesy word, but it fits. There was so much going on in music that you had the hard rock stuff. You had the hip hop stuff.
When you're saying we, what year are you talking about?
I'm talking about
1990.
Now let's go back. Let's go into the 80s, okay. Right? So let's say 1984, right? Okay. So you've still got your Van Halens and your AC/DCs putting out their hard rock stuff. Aerosmith is doing their thing.
Sort of.
Rap is starting to get,
we're getting that Raising Hell.
Right. That's starting to actually gain some popularity, and then there's the Kool Moe Dee that's about to come out in the next couple of years, and all those guys.
Oh well.
And you've also got this huge metal scene. You've also got this huge new wave scene,
right?
And you've got the punk scene. So I mean, there's a lot of things, and not to say that that's not the way it is now, but I think you'd be hard pressed.
Well, that stuff all mixed into pop,
right? Exactly, because you never knew if Van Halen could be on like Star 101, which was Rock 102 back then, but it might also be on 97 Rock. I mean, these are just two radio stations,
or on the Tonight Show.
Right, or exactly, or in prime time,
or get a #1 song in the nation.
Right, exactly, and
on Billboard.
I don't know that you really see that. I think everything is a lot more compartmentalized. So when I hear anybody talk about even the obscurest of 80s new wave bands, from some weird country in Europe that I've never even heard of before, but they had that one song,
like France or something.
Right, it's like
some country I never heard of.
But then you listen to it, and even though you're not even familiar with it, you could hear it one time, and you'll be like, timeless. That song will always be good. I was actually, the other day I listened to something popped up in one of my rotations of stuff that I have on my iPod, and it was a tune by Frau Lippo Lippi. I don't even know if anybody remembers who they are. And it's this song that you would swear came from any John Hughes movie or any one of those 80s movies. It was just that guy's sad that the girl's gone and he wants to get her back. But I mean, it's you could tell, obviously, it's from 1984.
You could just hear John Cusack in a leather coat.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
Exactly. That's immediately what you picture.
John Cryer, maybe, yeah.
So I think of that, and then I think about, I can't be objective about it because that's the kind of stuff that goes into my head because I know that song, you could make that movie right now using that song and it'll still work and it'll still fit. I think everybody probably feels that way about the music of their generation, no matter where they're coming from. So it is the truth that you can't say, well, you just can't do it. You can't not like it. That's really what it comes down to.
Here's a question. What do you define as the music of your generation? Is it like, how old are you? What's the range? Is it from like 14 to 24? Is that your generation? Is that?
I don't know. I mean, how do we look at that? Because,
10? When did you buy your first record? I joined the Columbia.
My first record, actually, my first two records were Van Halen 2 and Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap.
All right. All right. Well, you got in pretty early. Older brother.
Older brother. My dad joined
Columbia House.
Yeah, 12 for a penny.
Right.
So that was always, you got to pick a record or you got to pick a couple of records.
Sure. So I did that in probably 83. I joined that. So I was 8. And it's like, this is a great deal. And I'm trying to explain to my mom, like, it's going to be awesome. I got a penny. I get 12 records. This is awesome. And she's telling me, well, these cost $6 at the store. And when you buy the one in the club, it's going to cost you $23. Well, I'm going to do it anyway. All right, fine. But that was not my first. My first, I probably have told you this story. I've told this story many times, but my first record should have been Freeze Frame by Jay Giles.
Right.
Jay Giles Band, I should say. I saved my allowance for however long it took to buy the $7 album or whatever it was. And at the time, I don't know if it was Tops that was near our house or if it was something, if it was Bell's or Do Bells or whatever the grocery store was. But they sold records there, and I knew I'd seen Freeze Frame there, and that's what I wanted. So grocery shopping day, here's my $7 or whatever it was, gave it to my mom, and she was going to come home with my first ever record. I had a little blue, I just got it back a couple of years ago, awesome, like little kid record player, little folding case that opens up. And so I had some 45s. I had actually a lot of 45s. And I had like an album of Peter and the Wolf, like that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Not Peter Wolf. We would get to that. I was attempting to go from Peter and the Wolf to Peter Wolf. So I sent her, she went and she came home and I was very excited. And it turns out that she took the record, she flipped it over, she looked at the track list. And do you know the last song on Freeze Frame by any chance?
I got it upstairs, but
it's called Piss on the Wall.
Okay, right. No, yeah. No,
well, guess who didn't like that? My mom.
Right.
So guess what she did?
She took it back.
No, she didn't take it back. She didn't buy it. And she didn't just come home with my $7. She just picked something else. Oh. So rather than my first album, purchased with my own money, being Jay Giles Band Freeze Frame, it was actually a self-titled album by a gentleman named Christopher Cross. She just chose
to
use my money that I saved for a month or whatever it was. They're getting $1 a week or $2 a week. She bought me, so I've got Sailing and I've got Ride Like the Wind. Ride Like the Wind's a pretty good song.
It is. It is.
But I got that instead of, Centerfold and Freeze Frame and Piss on the Wall.
I think the only
Flamethrower and Rage in the Cage.
My mom's didn't care too much about the records, but the only ones she didn't want in the house were Sabbath. She didn't care about Kiss.
That one was scary. Like the Ouija board was scary.
And it was. I'm trying to think which one it was. It might have been War Pigs, and she was just like, "I don't want that in my house." I'm like, "Mom, why don't you listen to it?" I'm not listening to. It was like you're not going to argue with your mom when you're 10 years old.
You're also not going to solve it by having her listen to
exactly.
it.
Like you're not going to right. You're going to hear it anyway.
It's a terrible strategy, Josh. Jesus Christ.
Well, I'm trying to reason, right? I'm like 10 years old trying to bargain. That's just a bad idea.
I actually, so that was the first banning. My mom is like a regular tipper gore here. That happened. And then also when I was in high school at one point, I came home to find my copy of As Nasty as They Want to Be on the dining room table with all the tape ripped out in a big pile, just the heap of the actual tape on the table because my mom had discovered that I owned As Nasty as They Want to Be. What she didn't know is that album was terrible.
Oh, what?
I had it, and I really didn't listen to it at all. But she made a show of it because it was on the news every night,
right? With
the PMRC and the trial and all this stuff. So she discovered that I owned that, and that was not okay with her. But my mom censored me twice: once with Jay Giles, and the other time with that.
I think the only now that I think about it, speaking of rap, was when NWA came out with Straight Outta Compton. That was another one that
was a moment.
Right. I mean, so I remember playing it for my dad, and my dad was pretty open to all that kind of stuff. And we were just like, listen, and he was like looking, and he was like,
NWA for your dad?
Yeah. And my dad was into all kinds of different music. So.
Nobody was into, no dads were into NWA.
He was not. No, and I'm not going to say that.
Like
he was,
this.
no, he was not rocking out, man. I think he understood what was going on with it. It wasn't just like, I don't like that because there's swearing or whatever. But that would be something that, like, my mom, it was like, no way. You wouldn't even fart around with that one. That was a headphones kind of album. Like, you were not going to be playing that at top volume.
Absolutely. When I think of that album, I think of riding my bike, listening to it, like riding to Northwood Elementary to play football. Not real football, just like, pick up football.
Right.
Or riding to Kelly Park to play basketball in Cheektowaga. Like, that was what I did. That's it. That was, my God, that I would never even consider playing that out loud in front of my parents.
I played Suicidal Tendencies to a church group one time because I wanted them to actually hear, because I was that kind of guy that I didn't want the bands that I liked to be hated because they just were easy to hate. I wanted them to hear it and then go, okay, now I'm going to make the decision to hate it.
Right.
But don't tell me it's bad because you haven't even heard it. You don't know what the hell's going on. I mean, that was that kind of guy.
That's pretty deep for a kid, man. That's good. And you know what? I get the part about the church group. I don't get the part about trying to convince your mom to listen to Sabbath because that'll make it okay. And I definitely don't get playing Straight Outta Compton for your dad.
I did, yeah. I had the tape. I had the tape. My
He didn't
brother
tell
and
you
I-
not to do it anymore. He was like, you know what? Maybe not in my car.
Yeah, like exactly. I mean, it was just one of those things like, okay, if that's what you're into, that's cool. But, and he probably did say, don't be playing that when mom's around. Like don't give her that heart attack. But my dad was super encouraging with all that stuff. I mean, when you were saying driving to church and listening to the top 40, my dad got a tape player in the car. He bought a new, I don't remember what the heck it was. I think it was a Polera. And it had a tape deck. And that was like,
Big deal. That's a big deal.
I mean, because we only had records at home. We didn't have tapes. That was, right before that. So he went out and bought all these old soul tapes. He had a bunch of Buddy Miles Express albums and their tapes. Actually, I still have it, which is cool. I can't believe I actually still have that. Don Covey and Blues Brothers and all that kind of stuff. So that was like
That one
such,
I know. The other ones I don't know what you're talking about.
But it was like just this kick-ass blues funk, just, driving around a bunch of white guys in Lancaster listening to this killer freaking music, and everybody probably like going, okay, sure, here come the Gregorys. But my dad was always so into just different things that he never wanted to say, don't listen to that, or, I mean, we have rules, like don't play it, but, he wanted us to explore all that different stuff. They
Keep it
weren't
down in front of your mom.
Yeah, they weren't down with all the punk stuff. My mom never liked it. I'm sure my dad didn't like Black Flag or Dead Kennedys or understood the lure of that. I think they probably figured out that it was angry, it was loud. And when you're, especially when you're teen years, what are you? You're angry and you're loud. So there was always that level of, okay, I'm gonna let that kid run with this until something goes wrong. When of course nothing ever did, because I don't believe that music actually does that to people, which is a topic for another time. But again, I look back at all that stuff and I say, yeah, you know what? No matter what genre it was, all of it was good.
I don't think I was ever angry. I don't think I've ever been an angry person. I mean, I get mad, but like carrying around this burden of this or that, like, no, I had a good, solid family upbringing.
So did I.
I had friends. I played sports. I did all right in school. Did well in school. I went to a good school. I graduated. I got, everything was fine. But man, has angry music always appealed to me.
Right.
And it was just like, I'm not mad, but man, like Muir seems super mad.
Yeah.
And it seems so cool. Like I want to listen to this guy.
He's yelling at his mom.
NWA seems really mad, and Ghetto Boys seem really mad. Like the maddest I've ever heard anyone was the first time I listened to the Ghetto Boys album, the self-titled, where you open with a track called "Fuck 'Em," and like, well, all right, let's see where this one goes, and it just starts with them yelling the name of the song, 15 times in a row, and it's like, whoa, where's this going? It continues. Now we're serial killers. Okay, let's see where this is going. I mean, that's the angriest thing I've ever heard, and it's always been so, angry music has always been so attractive to me. Like, I know that a lot of the appeal of metal is just, these kids, they're angry, they're this, they're that. I've never been angry, but man, do I like watching other people be angry and channel that through music. And that, that happens really with a lot of the rap I used to listen to. Not that I don't anymore, but it's still around. I don't find occasion for it.
Sure.
And a lot of the metal was just like, that stuff was, I loved how mad they were. I wasn't, but I was maybe living vicariously through that or something, but I don't think you have to be mad to like angry music.
Do you think that period of your life was the reason that you did that? And I'm gonna kind of suss this out and expand on that.
Of course you are.
So you've got that kind of music, and then as you grow older, you're going through a lot of different stuff. You're going away to college for the first time. You're not, near a lot of the guys, maybe some of the guys, but not a lot of the guys you grew up with,
right.
Girls, whoever. And then there's these other bands that are also coming out that might appeal to that sense of trying to find yourself. And the reason that I'm talking about this is I'm going to introduce 9 Inch Nails, which was very violent in its own right, very aggressive, but also very, what's the word I'm looking for? Sensitive
Sensitive?
turmoil.
Oh,
sensitive.
okay.
You know what I mean? Like it's this sense of
Emotional and
desperation.
sensitive. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So, and again, when you're in college, now you're like making all these decisions that you think are going to be the decisions that are going to guide you for the rest of your life. It kind of flows all together, I think. And at least it did for us, and at least it did it for me. That, I still like the other stuff, but then you start to expand a little bit. And this other kind of music, which is sort of similar to the metal or the punk stuff that I like, but now has a very, very different feel. I mean, it just seemed to kind of flow one into the other. I don't know if, does that sound like something that...
Well, yeah, and I'll tell you why you're 100% right. The first time I heard Nails was Head Like a Hole. And where do you think I heard it? Headbangers Ball. It didn't fit. I shouldn't say it didn't fit. It fit, but man, did it stand out. Like, here's a topic for a future show. Write this down. Like, there are probably 10 songs ever where it just changed the course of what I was thinking entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's bigger than this, but I'll just sum it up like this. The 10 songs that made you turn your head and look at the speaker and go, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I don't know what this is, but I need to find out what this is. Head Like a Hole is absolutely on that list of the 10 songs where I was just like, what is that? Teen Spirit's an obvious one, but
Sure.
What is this? Killing in the Name.
I was just going to say,
what is going on here?
Rage Against the Machine came
Right.
on, what is that, 92?
Right.
And I was like, what are these guys
What
all about,
is
man?
this? Right. Maybe this is where it's going to go right now, and we don't have to do this later, but Straight Outta Compton was the same thing. It's like,
Holy shit, these guys
Whoa.
are right. This
Right.
is that's happening someplace?
Yeah.
That's really the way it is?
so for you to bring up Nine Inch Nails, it makes complete sense because I think my transition from I was listening to I used to say that I was black for 2 years because it was not just hip hop. Like I was into R&B stuff and
Bobby Brown.
yeah that
I had that phase.
New Jack Swing. Well, I'm just saying, like,
Oh yeah, Belle Biv DeVoe. Come on, that was
Belle Biv DeVoe. That album was review. It was a 5-star review in Rolling Stone magazine. It was a just straight up. You would think pop, whatever. Poison was the big hit. Doomy was the second biggest hit. But you listen back to that now, it is still unbelievably good. It's well produced. They're not all super talented singers, but one of them was, and they had the right vibe. And it was incredibly well done. I'll spend probably 2 months out of every year with that CD in my car because I cannot, it's from probably 90, I would guess.
something around there, yeah, right?
We're that far removed, and I still can't get enough of that album. I think it's just incredible. But like that type of stuff, and I used to care about what Keith Sweat was putting out, like that kind of, I was into that. But I was also like a metal guy and like a hair metal guy too. And I've always been a pop guy too. And it all sort of came together. And when I remember going to school, this is a funny, totally separate thing. I got paired with this guy he was going to be my roommate, some guy from Long Island. And I got to talk to him on the phone. It was very exciting to get this thing, the summer before freshman year at Geneseo. This is going to be your roommate. And I remember calling him, and I was just like, all I cared about was, please tell me this guy likes Metallica. Like, just, that'd be a good start. Because if he likes Metallica, I'm going to hit him with Pantera. And I'm going to tell him about the Goo Goo Dolls, too. We're going to do some other things. But just, like, as a baseline, just have the friggin' Black Album. Like, have that. And then I'll teach you that Ride the Lightning was better. Master of Puppets is better than that. And I'll teach you all that stuff. But give me a baseline. And I asked him what kind of music he was into. And he's like, I like Chicago a lot. And I like Chicago now.
Sure.
But I did not want to hear that when I was 17 years old, about to go live with this guy. And I don't remember where I was going with the story. I totally lost the thing because I went on that sidetrack. But all of the stuff that I had done before, Reznor is sort of at the core of making me go, what's going on? Because this was not yet me working at a college station and learning about the Pixies and learning about whatever. It wasn't that. It was just I'm watching Headbangers Ball to see the new release of the second track off of the latest Megadeth album. That's what I'm hoping. I know they're doing that at 1 o'clock. But a little bit before that, they just throw this thing. And I had heard of Nine Inch Nails because they were touring. They were opening for GNR. So it was like, they only had Pretty Hate Machine out at the time.
Right.
And I was like, what is this thing called 9 Inch Nails? And I'm still not, I always pictured 9 Inch Fingernails at the time. So I was like, oh, I think they mean like spiky nails, like with a hammer. Like, this is a little scarier than I thought. And things are spinning around, and it was crazy. And I think that kind of primed the pump for my transition from, or maybe it merged the Ralph Tresvants of the world and Keith Sweat and Johnny Gill with the Pantera and Helmet. Well, Helmet came a little later. Kind of pushed that, and it was like, oh, it can sound kind of electronic and kind of metal at the exact same time. Like, I didn't know you could do that.
Right.
And Janes probably did that too. We could talk a lot about what Janes did for my transition in music. But I think if you're looking for a bridge between what I did and what I eventually did, or what I cared about and what I eventually cared about, I think Nine Inch Nails is probably right there. Like, that's I'm crawling over the back of Trent Reznor to get from A to B.
I remember watching, I don't even know what the heck it was. It was a local cable access show. Couldn't tell you what it was. Couldn't tell you what it was about.
They're
but it
all
was the
great.
First,
so
right,
it
was awesome. It was a lot of static in the beginning, and they still, they never edited that out. They just kept playing and whatever. It was the tape.
Everybody's working off one mic, even though they're all supposedly wearing mics.
It was all they could cut during their studio time, and that was it. So, but they had they used a tune. By a track by Ministry, and it was off of Land of Rape and Honey, and the name of it's gonna escape me right now, but it'll come. I know it will. Stigmata. And so I'm like, my brother and I are sitting there watching this, and I'm like, going, what the fuck is that?
Right.
Because you heard.
Oh, I'm so excited about Ministry right now.
Right, it's like you heard.
That's the song. That's the one.
Right, you have Kraftwerk and all this, and I'm like, okay, electronic. And they're, I see that's kind of cool. I mean, I like Kraftwerk. I don't mind any of that synthesizer stuff. But then I heard that, and I'm like, "What? Holy shit! Like, is that a guitar?" Right. I'm like, "What is that? What is he doing?" Right?
Not like a jackal chainsaw.
And then we got this live album that I still, if you didn't feel like showing up, I think that was one of the ones I had. And then the whole 9 Inch Nails thing came out, and I don't think I heard Head Like a Hole first. I can't remember what I would have heard.
Terrible Lie. Ring Finger.
I can't even. Gosh, I'm not even.
Down in It.
That might have been Down in It, and I was like, okay, it's got this kind of boom, and this is happening, and then it still had, even though it was not as loud as Head Like a Hole, it still had this edge to it. It was when you and I went to see Afghan Wigs, and we're standing there, and you're the one who said it. You're like, this band is just seedy, man, and it was the same thing with 9 Inch Nails. Yes. I'm like, they're not as loud as Ministry. They're not as aggressive and as crazy as Ministry, but there's something about this that's just like, Ministry's making a lot of noise, and it's freaking awesome. But Trent Reznor
playing behind a fence on stage.
Exactly, like this. You can see the beer bottles like get whipped at him. But then there's Trent Reznor, who you can tell is doing this same kind of thing, but he's alone in a studio with no lights on, man. He is just like, whatever he is pouring into this record is coming out of him, and it's from a really, really dark place. Whether or not the songs are always like that, but it was so powerful to hear two bands like that, I was into the metal stuff. We had, all the Metallica and stuff, and I was never a super huge Metallica fan, but I liked them. I mean, they were fast, and they were loud, and it was good. And I liked Suicidal, and they were fast and loud. I loved the Cro-Mags and DRI and all those, those crazy crossover bands. But these guys, it was like, okay, we're gonna do that. That's cool, because I'm sure they like all those bands too. But we're gonna jack this up so far. It's gonna be so much different than anything anybody's ever. I couldn't tell you that I've ever heard a Ministry song played on the radio, other than college radio. There's no way. I mean, maybe
just one. Oh, you know what?
Maybe just one fix.
I've heard just one fix on. When they used to do like Live from the Phoenix on CFNY.
I was just going to say CFNY. Yeah, you might hear it up from in Canada,
but that might be it.
But damn,
or
it was
just
just
a hot rod.
Yep.
But that's not really that. I mean, it sort of is. I don't know.
Well, that's Gibby. Too, from Butthole Surfers.
Right, but it's them.
But yeah, but it's the music. But it was like, I mean, that was another turning point. So I had that little punk thing going on, the new wave thing in the '80s. But when we kind of turned this conversation into moving into college. you're right. There were those songs. They're probably top 10. I would have to do to 25 just because I hate not including so many other songs.
Yeah,
but
every top 10 list I
how
have includes
mind-blowing,
49
right?
things.
How mind-blowing was it? Because even when we went to college and I would come home, I could tell my buddies that didn't go away to college, that were still here, going to college here, did not have the exposure. They did not. I mean, I came back with all these bands, and they're like, "Who the hell are these guys?"
They had no Tool.
They had nobody knew Tool, and I'm like, I'm gonna play these, and nobody liked Tool except me. But like I mentioned before we went on the air, with Ron Hawkins' new venture with the Lowest of the Low box set. Yeah. Lowest of the Low. I mean, they played at the bar that I would eventually work at. Brought that kind of stuff home. It was so eye opening, and I remember feeling like, you guys are missing out on so much, man. I'm like, you're listening. You got to check this out and check these guys out, and being so passionate and being so fired up about that, and wondering why they weren't. And I'm like, they'd never listened to Nine Inch Nails. They never watched Headbangers Ball. They were doing their own thing. And, Peter Cetera. That's a shout out. It's a shout at my buddy Kevin. If he listens to this, Kevin, you like Peter Cetera. But
I know Kevin.
You know Kevin.
And I can see that.
You can see that.
Yeah.
But a lot of my buddies, especially guys that I lived with, the guy, my buddy Timmy Mack, who I lived with for 3 years after my freshman year, he was big into Public Enemy and the R&B tip, and it was what was the big one that I can't remember? Oh, rats! Now I'm not Silk. Remember Silk?
Yes.
He played that album all the time, so it was like, okay, so
I didn't like that.
I didn't either,
yeah.
but then he played
I liked
Bobby
everything
Brown.
Teddy Riley did,
and I was like, okay, so now I'm going to start listening to this stuff too. So it was just this amalgamation of really, really cool things happening. And I hope to God that it's still happening now, especially at college stations, because I have listened to my old college station when I'm in that area. And I'll be down there on Tuesday, and I'll probably listen to it again. And I was just like, what are you doing? This is awful. Yeah. Like you can play anything that you want, guys. This is what you're choosing to play? I don't know. I guess that makes me an elitist, but it just drives me insane.
No, it makes you old, I think.
Yeah, right?
I'm with you, though. I hope that people who are now the age that we're talking about being, care as much 20 years removed, 25 years removed from that about the stuff that they were doing then. Like do you remember the first song you played on? Because we couldn't play everything we wanted.
That's true.
We had a rotation. Now it seems like a couple years, maybe even a year before I got there, it was just freewheel it, do whatever you want. But we had people who were kind of training to be music directors and training to be program directors, and there was a rotation. It gave you a lot more leniency than an FM DJ would have now, which is probably zero, but. I remember it was like A and then B and then A and then recurrent and then D was DJ choice and then A and then B. And there's a clock, there's a rotation of the songs you would play. And it was actually cards in a little box and you would just pull them out and move it to the back and whatever. The first song I ever played, I'd never heard of the band. I'd never heard the song. The first song I ever played on college radio was Breeders' Cannonball. Like, what an iconic,
no kidding,
just awesome. And I have a tape of the first show I ever did. I was terrible, but my God, is the music great. The reason I have the tape is my parents knew I was doing a show. They knew I loved radio. I was a first semester, sophomore year. I got a show. And they drove up to, they sat in the parking lot at Wegmans in Geneseo with a boombox and recorded the entire show.
That's awesome.
It would not have occurred to me to record it because I knew I would be bad. So it's just like, all right, I'm going to try this. But they were excited for me, and I got the tapes, a week later or a year later. I don't even know when it was, but I still had them. And I'm very bad, but the music is very good. And the first song I ever played on the radio was Breeders' Cannonball. Pretty good start.
I think when I first, because Fredonia had an AM station and an FM station. So you couldn't go right to FM. They wanted you to start, and back then it's
AM music also?
AM music, yeah.
Okay.
So AM, it was called Rock 600. So that was more...
Training ground,
right. They wanted you to start over at Rock 600 first. So a guy that I met at orientation who ended up living right next to me in a dorm, my buddy Mike, we got a show on AM just because we knew we'd be able to just play rock, and we didn't have to worry about the format of what was going on
Right.
the FM. But I think the first song I played on FM, because I got a specialty show the following year on my own, and that was just a punk rock show. So I just, I had free reign to do all that.
I did a Canadian show my senior
which
year,
kicks
north
ass.
of the border,
How
trying to
freaking-
introduce the same thing you were saying earlier about coming home and trying to be like, why aren't you excited about Nine Inch Nails? I'm in Geneseo going, an hour from here, everybody really is starting to get into this band called the Tragically Hip. Maybe you guys might want to check it out. And the Low and Headstones, and,
right.
whatever it was at the time, Odds, Bare Naked Ladies, even I think was a
Sure, that was
part of
huge
back then. But yeah, its specialty show was like you were cool.
Yeah, it was like, oh wow, he got to
Big
do that.
deal.
And it was always like a weird time. It was always like Wednesday at 9 or something, 9 to 11. Like nobody's listening to him. 9
No,
to
nobody's
11.
listening at all.
Of course, at all. Like maybe
My
your
parents
friends,
and
right?
My parents in the parking lot. That's it.
But I remember, I think the first tune that I played, and it's funny because I'm actually now friends with a guy who became the bass player. It was a Black 47 tune. And a lot of people, they were an Irish band from New York, and they just played
Funky
forever.
Kaylee?
I can't remember the name of the
That was
song.
the big one.
I can't remember the name of the song, but Joe Bearclaw Burkaw and I are still talking. I don't think that was it, no. But I don't know. I mean, I wasn't the PD, so I mean,
Right.
it was just, you're just playing what you're
Right.
supposed to
Do
play.
what you're told.
But I think that was the first one. And again, I didn't really hear Irish music like that. We had Irish music in the house, especially, around, the March and all that kind of stuff. My dad would play, traditional stuff like that. But to hear a band doing that, that was like, oh, wow, this can actually be souped up a little bit. So I think that was probably my first one.
All right.
And we mixed it up, too. I know the PDs always wanted to do a lot of world music. And it was really tough to do a show that way, where you might have 1 minute you're playing something like Black 47, and then the next it's some South African band that none of it flows at all. Right. And now you're DJ trying to make it work desperately, waiting.
And you don't know how to do that.
Right,
yet.
you don't know how to do that. And there's a lot of before that and before that and before that.
Yeah. And coming up.
And coming up. And then getting to the one song that you want to play was such a big deal. And it's like, you're not even paying attention to the transitions from the other music, even though it probably was freaking gold. It was probably some of the best music you'll ever hear. But I just really want to play Rage Against the Machine. That's really what I want to do. Because I know if my friends are listening, that's the only thing they want to hear.
I cannot wait until the next episode or a future episode. I'm going to bring the little clip of my first microphone is on thing. Because I played, 4 songs without talking. And then turned it on. That was before that.
Yep.
Before that. And I literally, and now here's a song I really want to play. And then I mangled it. I don't want to ruin the experience for you by telling you the whole thing. You've got to hear it. It's so bad.
I just bought a little cassette player that hooks up through USB, and I've got a whole bunch of stuff that we did on GR and BEN. Mm-hmm. And I do have some college stuff, and I did listen to some of the stuff that I did in college, and I'm like, how the hell did I get a job in radio? How did anybody give me a shot? Like, this is terrible.
Are you recognizable, like even your voice?
A little bit.
I'm not.
I mean, it sounds really, really young. I mean, we were.
But it's not even young. I was afraid. I was timid.
Sure.
Like, I feel like I have always been the arrogant asshole that I am now. And I say that, self-deprecating. I don't really think that I'm, I kind of do. Like, I care. It's like, when I believe something, I say it, and I want you to hear that I'm serious. And so I always, I punctuate things. I think that I can go into a room and talk to people, and they'll be like, that guy knows what he's talking about, even if I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, I have the ability to do that. And I feel like I've always had that. I feel like I've always been a good, I don't want to say bullshitter, but like I can talk to people. The dude that was on the radio in the fall of 1993, whatever it was, that was not me. I was not the person that I think I was back then, and I can tell because it's on tape. Like you can't fake that. I can listen to old. My transition to becoming confident in my own voice, I think, happened somewhere between then and when I first was on GR, because I can listen to anything that I've ever done in sports talk radio, and it sounds like me. I'm not as polished. I'm not as whatever. I'm not speaking as clearly. I don't make as salient points, but it's me. It's like young me. This other thing from 1993, that's not even a dude I know. I still think that I was him back then, but I don't think I was. I think I changed a lot, from then till now.
And I think it was, I don't want to say easy, but when I had, Mike and I did the show for, 2 semesters. And I think it was so much easier and much more comfortable because you knew that you didn't have to carry everything. Mike was going to do some of that too. I wish I had air checks from that. I don't think that I have anything that early. I really wish I did. But so to have that comparison. But I think that's right. I think that you have to you have to find yourself in the process of that. And back then, I think all I wanted to do was play music, and I didn't think that I had to actually talk. I don't think that I actually had to fill time because I'm like, probably with the attitude of what does anybody care what I have to say? Until, then senior year, then you're like, no, what I have to say is way more important than, we did the morning show and, we had all that kind of stuff. And it was like, that's really when I wanted to just run my mouth.
Right.
And, then transitioning into GR when we got to do the sports talk stuff, being able to share your opinions. Obviously not music-based, but I think that's really when I started to realize, because at first, all I thought I needed to do was play record after record after record.
Well, you know what? Now that you say that, it's kind of comparable to the thing that you have to resist. Like if I tell you over and over, you need to see Super Troopers. You've never seen Super Troopers. Oh, my God, you're going to love Super Troopers. You've got to see it. And then we get together and we sit down. I'm like, all right, we're going to watch Super Troopers tonight. And I keep feeling like I have to say, this part, watch this part. This part really matters.
Right.
That's what we were doing. It was like, all right, those are 4 other songs, but really listen to this one because this one's really good. I care about this one. Okay, shut up for 25 minutes until the next song that I get to play. All right, really, this one, this is the one. And that's what we did, I think. At least
Probably,
that's what I did to start.
Probably.
That's what it sounds like, the way you described it and the way that I remember doing it. It was like the stuff I have to do, the stuff I have to do, the stuff. All right, everybody pay attention now. The stuff I have to do, the stuff,
And it's tough because I spent time my senior year. I was the PD, and a lot of people I know will be critical of PDs and be like, "Oh, why are you always picking this music?" That's not an easy job to do, especially when you've got a lot of the material that we got. I mean, you were getting CDs every single day by the crate, and having to come up with, okay, what do we need to report to CMJ? What do we need to be playing? What is actually going to be, and knowing full well that you have to be different. You don't want to be falling into the same format as any other radio station within 75 miles of what you've got going on. And I remember having to do those schedules and have to pick those things out and having a staff of people on them because I don't know anything about world music at the time. I didn't listen to any of that stuff. But also being confident enough. Nobody did. There was the one guy who had that job because he got a key to the office and he got to hang out. Yeah. But I look back at that, and then I look at the way that things are now, and I'm wondering if they have the same struggles. I would like to think that they do. And the reason I say that, and again, I don't want to be the get off my lawn guy and talk about the music that I hear now, but I would be hard-pressed to be a PD right now with the stuff that's coming down the pipe. And it's not because I don't appreciate the musicianship, because I think anybody who's out there busting their ass, whether I like it or not, should be shit on. But at the same time, I don't know if I'd be able to do the same thing that I did back then, even spinning tunes, having to get through those 4, because those 4 now with the age and the opinions that I have, I would be like, yeah, blows. Okay, yeah, here's another one that blows. Here's another piece of shit. Okay, now we have the latest from whatever. But I think I would have that attitude, which obviously isn't healthy.
No,
but. God, and the reason I look
I'd be like, I gotta listen to this guy. This guy,
right?
This guy's on Thursdays from 9 to midnight. He's interesting. He doesn't talk a lot, but when he talks,
yeah, he's another piece of shit. And okay, great, we're gonna get to the good stuff. It's so funny how that works out, though. And I like I said, I don't want to bash things and say, oh well, this that, but I don't know. And again, maybe it's because I paint the past music that I've, that we grew up with, that we transitioned from one point in life to the other with a gold paintbrush. Yeah. But the truth is that stuff is going to be around a hell of a lot longer than a lot of stuff that's coming out today. I truly believe that. I think that it'll transition over into stuff that will be now the oldies, which doesn't ever seem to actually happen, but I think eventually it's going to have to actually go that way. So Pearl Jam probably will be considered something that you'll be playing in an oldies format someday. and never even having to think that it would actually be on an alternative station that's commercial right now.
Yeah. It's weird though, because the Pearl Jam you're talking about is the old Pearl Jam, and they've been putting out music for 20 years that
Right.
won't fall into that category
Right.
at all. You know, the first 3, maybe 4 albums still, I mean, you can hear them every day. You flip around the
Right,
dial,
yeah, they're there.
you can hear them every single day. And they've put out a bunch of music that has been relevant to their fans, but has not. And I think maybe that's kind of what we're talking about here is the niche, the different niches of music have existed forever. But the era where we sort of cut our teeth on radio, and even before that, where from the time we started caring, I'll say I started caring about music in 1982, 3, something like that. From there through, let's say, the end of college, 96, is the stuff that is burned in my head. But it was also an era where I was doing this weird thing and this weird thing and this weird thing. And every now and then, something that I was listening to would bubble to the top. I was listening to Blues Traveler way before Blues Traveler had Runaround, which was a giant hit. And it was just like, oh, good. This band that I like is being rewarded. And 20 years from now, that song is still going to be played somewhere. People will recognize that, and they'll be like, oh, you know, that one-hit wonder, Blues Traveler, or maybe 2 if you count Hook, whatever it is. But all of the stuff we were listening to found its way like out of the little niches into the mainstream and into the pop charts. And you couldn't, you know, the songs like Runaround hit the top 10. And I don't like, I haven't looked at a top 10 in a long time, but it's every song seems to be, you know, this artist featuring this artist and this artist.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's that, and it's fine. I get that stuff's popular, and it always was. I mean, the featuring word wasn't prominent, but the idea of, you know, sort of melding R&B with pop and turning that into, I mean, that's been around for as long as we have, for sure. But it seems like that's the only thing that becomes popular, you know, that's unanimously approved for a list. And I don't even know what the list means anymore. If it means spins on radio stations, if it means downloads on iTunes, I don't know. But I know those charts used to mean something to me. Watching, you know, Use Your Illusions, watching what they did on the charts, watching them debut at 1 and 2, and 2 beat 1 or whatever it was. That used to mean something because the rock bands could get in and the hip hop acts could get in. Rap, let's call it rap because that's what we said then. They could all get into the main stage, and I don't think that happens anymore. I'm sure that there's very good rock music being played by bands, and there are people who know that and follow that scene, but they have to do it on their own. The average listener to a pop radio station is not being exposed to that the way that it was back when we were listening.
That makes sense.
And when we were really passionate about our stuff.
That makes sense. And this is interesting while you're saying that, and about these whatever, if it's rap or R&B, featuring. I like to think that also does happen in the rock or alternative, whatever we're going to label, we're going to paint that as. But it seems to be not just a song or two. It always seems to be like these bigger collaborations, like Audio Slave, right? Like when the Audio Slave, I mean, that's where I see that going. Or
Velvet Revolver.
Temple of the Dog, which was a one-off, and I know that they talked about doing more, but that was back with Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and guys from Mother Love Bone and all that kind of stuff. So I see that happening still, but it seems to be more of a whole band, and we're going to put an album out, and it's not just going to be a piecemeal. And we're going to do this song with this guy, and then we're going to have somebody else come in for the next song on that album. I like the variety, I do, but I also think that in that genre where that really exists all the time, I don't want to say it's a cop-out, but it just seems like it
stops being unique.
Right, it stops being unique, and it's just like, well, everybody's doing that now, and I don't think that a lot of other genres of music necessarily follow that pattern. So I do every once in a while look at the charts, like you were just saying. Half of them, I don't even understand what they are anymore. So it'll be top 10. I mean, I've looked in Rolling Stone, and I go to that chart, and I'm like going, okay, all I wanted was, what are the top albums? What are the top,
Right.
you know,
What are
like
people buying? If
right,
people are
exactly.
buying
And I'm like,
music,
but I'm
huh?
looking at some of this and I'm like going, what the, I don't know what that is.
I don't even know
I'm
what you're
like,
saying.
right. I'm like, this is like Greek. I'm like, I don't remember this ever being that way. And I guess, well, that's just showing age too.
Yeah,
So
we're old. In conclusion, we're old.
we could go, right. Right. That's it. That's a wrap. Well, cool. This is fun. Gee, man, we're over an hour.
That doesn't surprise me.
We can bullshit. That's for sure.
I don't even know. Did we do the topic?
Did we even
talked
stay
about?
on topic?
I don't know.
Who cares?
Where does it go? You need a starting point for these things.
Exactly.
And I think we started somewhere and we ended here, and that works for me. And now I know that I have to find that clip to show you.
You got to find that.
Absolutely not even me. I was in 1993.
That's amazing. I wish I maybe I do have one or two. I think I have a bunch of projects that I put together in multi-track.
I've got that too.
So maybe, and I'm like, I don't want to even.
No. I don't. I don't need
Dan
to.
Bergeron pass me.
I don't need to show you all that stuff. I need to show you me telling you about breeders, and I don't even maybe Connells, and like I don't even know what else.
Oh my God,
I played.
Connells, Jesus.
And then trying to introduce "Room 1,000 Years Wide" by Soundgarden
Right. Oh my God.
on vinyl.
Is that the one you wanted to play?
That was the one I really wanted
That's
to play.
a freaking great song.
It would be if you started with the song instead of starting with 15 seconds of the other one fading out and then just the record going.
Oh, smooth.
It's supposed to start down, and instead it starts with. It's the worst and best. It's so great.
Well, who are you going to fight? Who are you coming back to train for?
Well, I'm going to take my time. I think I'm going to fight 3 fights. Maybe I'll fight Baby Joe Massey. I'll fight probably 1 fight before Baby Joe Massey. After that, probably I'll fight someone else. Probably fight 3 fights, and hopefully I'll get a shot.
Any chance you'd fight Macy up in Buffalo, his hometown?
Yeah, no doubt about it.